The votes are coming in.
And across America, voters are having their say.
Here in the heartland of America,
to our global headquarters here in New York.
We'll watch the returns come in together.
And we'll analyze the results together.
And together, we will find out who the next president of the United States will be. Since our country's founding, its citizens have strived for one singular goal:
that we, the people, would elect America's leaders and determine the course of our nation.
It's never been perfect, with many having to fight for the chance to make their voices heard.
But through civil war, global conflict, and countless other extraordinary events, we have kept the tradition of democracy alive.
In 2016, a political outsider upended the Republican Party, shocking experts and the country.
Taking an unconventional approach and a loyal following all the way to the nation's highest office.
Now, 4 years later, a Democratic mainstay looks to take back the White House, where he was once second in command.
We've been through so much as a country in the past year, and what we decide will shape so much of what's to come.
2020 has been anything but ordinary, but our duty as Americans remains the same.
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
You're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey, we're going to have the greatest economy in the world.
We're going to choose hope over fear.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
The end of this chapter of American darkness began here tonight.
Welcome to Fox News World Headquarters in New York. After months of campaigning, virtual conventions, and 2 contentious debates, we are now less than 1 hour away from the first poll closings of 2020. Welcome to our coverage of Democracy 2020, the presidential election. I'm Brett Baer.
And I'm Martha McCallum. It has been a campaign year like no other, as the pandemic leaves its mark on every aspect of life and this election. The virus has hit millions of Americans and taken the lives of more than 200,000. And the shutdown of our economy, the closing of schools, all of it, a heavy burden for families coast to coast.
We have seen changes to the very way we vote, with a dramatic increase in both mail-in ballots and early voting. A record 102 million people voted before this day even dawned.
So against that backdrop, some sense of the scope and scale of what is at stake tonight. And as if this night needed any more drama, there is no telling when we are going to have a winner in this thing. It could be hours, it could be days, it could possibly take even weeks. But we will learn the outcome as we go through state by state together starting tonight.
Well, gentlemen, stand by. We are getting ready for our first poll closings of the night.
The polls are closing now in 9 key states. 98 electoral votes are up for grabs. This hour could impact everything.
We're going to win the state of Georgia. We're going to win 4 more years.
Voters have made their voices heard.
It's the most important election in our lifetime. It'll make all the difference here in North Carolina.
Which states went red? Which states went blue? Who have they chosen?
We're going to again win Ohio.
You can make all the difference in Ohio.
And it is 7 o'clock on the East Coast, which means polls have just closed in half a dozen states. The most closely watched state at this hour is Georgia, which President Trump almost certainly needs to win if he's to secure a second term. As of this moment, too early to project a winner in this crucial battleground.
It's also too early to make a call in Kentucky. Meanwhile, Biden will defeat Trump in the Commonwealth of Virginia, according to our decision desk.
And the former vice president will also win in the state of Vermont. No big surprise there in the early part of this evening. We will need to look at more data before we can make a projection in the state of South Carolina. And in the state of Indiana, where Trump has enjoyed a lead over Biden in the pre-election polling, also not quite ready to make a call in Indiana.
Let's turn now to the Senate, control of which is very much up for grabs tonight. The most interesting state to watch at this hour is Georgia, the only place in the country that has not one but two Senate races on the ballot. Either of those could help determine control of the chamber. But here's the kicker. We might not find out who will fill either of those Senate seats until January. That's because of a Georgia state law requiring candidates to win more than 50% of the vote tonight or face a runoff election 9 weeks from today.
And in the regularly scheduled Georgia Senate race, incumbent Republican David Perdue is battling Democrat Jon Ossoff and Libertarian Shane Hazel. As of this moment, it is way too early to project who will get the most votes there, much less whether, if anyone, will exceed the 50% level they need to avoid the runoff. It's a similar story in Georgia's special Senate election, where Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler is facing challenges from a variety of candidates, including Reverend Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, and Congressman Doug Collins, a Republican.
We cannot yet make a call in the South Carolina race between Republican incumbent Lindsey Graham and Democratic challenger Jamie Harrison, who managed to throw really a scare into Graham during this hard-fought campaign. A lot of money going into that South Carolina race. Could be a long time before we actually make a call in that race. Well, it only took a few seconds, but the Fox News decision desk can now project President Trump will defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of Kentucky. Not a surprise there. But the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is up for election there. He was leading going into today. We'll see where that race heads in Kentucky as far as the Senate Majority Leader's fate. Donna, your look at tonight, what you're looking for early here.
That's not the case in some of them tonight.
Right. It's important to note that it's the voter survey that we've taken around the country, and it gives you a snapshot of where people are. But as the real vote total populates, that's where our decision desk makes the calls. And they're not going to make a call unless they feel certain that a state's going to go one way or another. We saw that in Virginia. There's not a lot of vote in. However, where the vote is, and our voter analysis survey gave them the ability to call Virginia for Joe Biden. Seconds away from the next poll closing here on the East Coast. It is 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, which means polls have just closed in 3 more states, including 2 considered must-wins for President Trump's re-election. First and foremost, Ohio, the biggest prize of the hour. 18 electoral votes that, frankly, are considered more crucial to President Trump than Joe Biden as far as getting to 270. Candidates locked in a tight race in the Buckeye State. The Fox News decision desk will need a lot of time, probably, to analyze more voting data before declaring a winner there.
However, it's not too early to project that President Trump will easily defeat Joe Biden in the state of West Virginia, one of the most pro-Trump states in America, so no big surprise there tonight.
Also in West Virginia, the Fox News decision desk can now project that Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito will turn back a challenge from Democrat Paula Jean Swearengin.
North Carolina polls were set to close at 7:30, but they are going to remain open in a handful of counties until 8:15. We'll get you an update on the crucial presidential and Senate races there as soon as we can. Some delays that kicked in North Carolina, which we heard about a bit earlier in the night. So nothing alarming there, but they got a late start.
The machines in some of the precincts did not work, and they had to kind of start late, so they're going to finish late, 45 minutes. There you see the race to 270, 16-13. We've got a long way to go. Bill Hemmer is back, and we'll be checking in throughout the night. Thank you, Bill. We have a race to call, and that is for the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. We can now project that he will win that Senate race against Amy McGrath, the Democrat. She spent $73.4 million on this race. We're looking at it not being that close. And Mitch McConnell will go on to another term. We just don't know whether he will be Senate Majority Leader or Senate Minority Leader by the end of the process tonight. And we may have some more calls in just seconds.
The polls are closing in 18 states. 175 electoral votes are up for grabs. What happens in this hour could define America.
We are going to win my home state of Florida.
We win Florida, and it's all over.
The people are choosing. The votes are in. Who will cross the threshold? Who will be the President of the United States of America?
It may come down to Pennsylvania. And I believe in you. I believe in my state.
If we win Pennsylvania, we win the whole thing.
It's 8 o'clock here in New York City. Polls have just closed in another 16 states. Let's begin with the big prize, Florida, the biggest electoral prize of this hour and a must-win state for President Trump if he is to secure a second term. The Fox News decision desk is currently poring over a lot of voting data from the Sunshine State, a lot of actual votes, plus what we know from voter analysis, but it's not ready to project a winner there.
Very tight, as expected, in Florida as we wait for the rest of that to come in. And while Joe Biden could win the presidency without Florida, he would have a much tougher time without Pennsylvania, where both candidates have focused so ferociously over the course of the last several days. It could be a while before we know who wins the Keystone State. It could be days or weeks, perhaps, before we know what happens in Pennsylvania. It didn't begin to process their mail-in vote until today. They've also got some counties that they won't even begin counting until Wednesday. They're going to go through the day of vote in Pennsylvania, and then in those 7 counties, they'll start opening envelopes and beginning the mail-in vote.
I'm more optimistic. It is not, however, too early to call the winners in a dozen other contests, including the District of Columbia. In fact, let's start with our nation's capital, liberal stronghold. Biden will easily defeat President Trump, according to our Fox News voter analysis. Not surprisingly, Biden's home state of Delaware will also vote decisively for the former vice president. Biden will also coast to victory in Massachusetts, according to our Fox News decision desk.
And the reliably blue state of Rhode Island will also be added to the Biden column tonight. Ditto for Connecticut, where the former vice president will coast to victory as well. Biden will also prevail in Illinois, where the president has long railed against the violence in Chicago. He will also pick up the perennially blue state of Maryland, according to the decision desk. And finally, Joe Biden will win the state of New Jersey. So a big blue run for him in those states, none of which are surprises tonight.
President Trump also racks up some electoral votes at this hour. The Fox News decision desk can now project that Trump will easily win the state of Alabama. We're also watching a Senate race there. The president will also prevail in Mississippi, according to the Fox News voter analysis. You will not be shocked to learn that the Republican president will breeze past his Democratic challenger in the state of Tennessee.
Fox can also project that President Trump will win Missouri, which has now voted Republican in 6 consecutive presidential contests. The president will also beat Joe Biden in Oklahoma, according to our decision desk.
One of the few states where we cannot project a winner at this hour is New Hampshire, where we need to analyze more voting data before making a call in the Granite State. Finally, let's turn to Maine, one of the 2 states that does use the winner-take-all method for allocating electoral votes. They do not. Actually, they split out one. Our decision desk can now project that Joe Biden will win 3 of Maine's 4 electoral votes. But again, there's another one that's split out. We don't have enough data yet to determine the winner of Maine's 2nd congressional district, which represents the state's 4th electoral vote. That importance of that one vote really could loom large if the national electoral contest comes down to the wire. The other one that splits it out, Nebraska.
So Maine is also a state that has a very closely watched Senate race at this hour. Republican Senator Susan Collins is trying to fend off a challenge from Democrat Sarah Gideon in a race that could help determine overall control of the Senate. It is too early to make a projection on that race at the moment. The other big Senate race of the hour is in Alabama, where incumbent Democrat Doug Jones faces a strong challenge from Republican Tommy Tuberville. Too early to call that contest, which, if Tuberville prevails, could be the first Senate flip of the night, and that would leave them with only 3 pickups in the future if they were to do that.
And there you see the balance of power. Fox News can project that Republicans will keep their Senate seats in Tennessee and Oklahoma, while Democrats will keep their Senate seats in Illinois, Maryland, New Jersey, and Delaware. All of the other Senate races in the states where the polls have now closed are still too early or close to call. The same for gubernatorial races. We'll bring you any surprises in that as we get them.
So let's take a look at the electoral map right now. You've got 56 for President Trump, 91 for Joe Biden. It's almost as if, you're playing the what if.
A lot of non-white voters. Who expected that?
Yeah, we've got a call real quick. Stand by, Tucker. President Trump will win the state of Indiana, home state to Vice President Mike Pence. We can make that call. The Fox News decision desk projecting that the president, will win Indiana.
It is now 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast and 7:30 p.m. in Arkansas, the only state where polls close at this point in the evening. Fox News decision desk can now project that President Trump will easily defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of Arkansas. Also, polls have now belatedly closed in North Carolina, a must-win state for the president if he's to secure another term. Democrats hope to turn this reliably red state blue, I should say, this year, although it's too early to determine whether those efforts will succeed.
We're also watching the North Carolina Senate race, which could help determine the balance of power, whether Republicans keep control in the Senate. Republican incumbent Tom Tillis facing a strong challenge from Democrat Cal Cunningham. Too early to call that race. Back to Arkansas, we can now project that Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who some believe will run for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024, can do so if he chooses from the comfort of his Senate seat. That's because tonight Cotton will win re-election, easily beating a Libertarian challenger, Ricky Dale Harrington, which is a major question at this hour.
Yep. We know Mitch McConnell has secured his seat in Kentucky, but we're waiting for a lot of big states to come in. Georgia, as we have mentioned, is probably not going to be known this evening, but places like North Carolina, where Tom Tillis has been in a tight race against Cal Cunningham, is one we're going to be watching for, hopefully over the course of tonight or the next couple of days as we get ready to make the next set of race calls. And it is now 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and the polls have just closed in 14 states across the country. Several of these are considered crucial battlegrounds for whoever will win the White House. Let's start tonight with Arizona, a state that could make or break President Trump's bid for a second term, although the president spent the last 8 months trailing Joe Biden in Arizona's pre-election polls. He did manage to close that gap in the campaign's final days. Still, as of this moment, our decision desk has no decision to announce on the Grand Canyon state.
Nor can we make a call in Texas. Democrats have been trying to turn Texas blue for several presidential cycles. A win by Joe Biden tonight would obviously be devastating to Trump's campaign. The Trump campaign thinks they can pull that out in Texas, but it might be close.
And then there's the upper Midwest, which played such an important role in President Trump's upset victory over Hillary Clinton back in 2016. 3 states from that region are up for grabs at this hour, which Democrats are ahead in all 3 at this moment, according to the Fox News voter analysis, although it's too early to project the winners. In Wisconsin, where pre-election polls favored Joe Biden, although it should be remembered that they incorrectly showed Clinton winning 4 years ago.
Michigan, where President Trump barely squeaked a victory than candidate Trump in 2016, and Minnesota, where Trump narrowly lost in 2016, and they invested some time in Minnesota this time around. We can, however, project that President Trump will beat Joe Biden in Kansas based on our voter analysis tonight.
And the Republican president will also defeat his Democratic challenger in the state of Louisiana. In Nebraska, one of 2 states that does not use a winner-take-all method for allocating electoral votes, Trump will win 4 of the state's 5 electoral votes there. Too early to project a presidential winner in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which represents the last electoral vote.
Remember, Maine's the other one. We still haven't called that other congressional district there either. And similarly conservative Wyoming, President Trump will rack up another easy victory there. And the story is the same in North Dakota, where the president comes out on top. And unsurprisingly, Trump also wins South Dakota.
In New York, the Fox News decision desk can project that Joe Biden will cruise to an easy victory over President Trump in a place that he used to call his hometown. He calls Florida home now. Biden will also win the state of Colorado, according to our decision desk there, but too early to project a winner in New Mexico, where Biden enjoyed strong support in pre-election polling.
All right, let's turn now to the Senate races, where polls have just closed. The first state, Colorado, where our decision desk can now project that Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper, the former governor there, will oust Republican Senator Cory Gardner in the first Senate flip of the night. Remember, Democrats need 4 net, or 3 and the White House to take over control. This is 1 net in the Democrats' column. Another closely watched Senate race is the special election in Arizona, where Republican Senator Martha McSally faces a strong challenge from Democrat Mark Kelly, a former astronaut. Kelly currently has a lead over McSally, but again, it's too early to call that race.
Similarly, Michigan Senator Gary Peters, a Democrat, is ahead of Republican John James, although it is too early to project a winner in that race.
Finally, Fox projects that Republicans will keep Senate seats in Nebraska and Wyoming. Whew, made it through that one.
Yeah, that's a long list.
That's
We got a lot
one.
of information in there. I mean, yeah, obviously some of those races President Trump has spent a lot of time on. In Michigan, pulling for John James, a veteran who has run before in the state of Michigan and running again now. Gary Peters giving him a run for his money. That one, as we said, too close to call at this point.
And really,
or
Michigan,
too early to call, I should say.
Yeah, Michigan, where it goes on the presidential, as you look at the race to 270, it's now 129 to 94. How Michigan and the presidential race fares there could affect that Senate race very closely. Let's just talk for a second. Cory Gardner losing to John Hickenlooper. Chris, Gardner was one of the most vulnerable senators out there. Colorado is purplish, leaning blue. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. There are about 9 toss-up races, but there were 2 that looked likely to flip. One was Alabama, Doug Jones against Tommy Tuberville. And interestingly enough, we haven't called that. Everybody thought that was likely to go to the GOP. We haven't called it yet, not to say it won't happen. And then the other one was sort of leaning Democrat, was the incumbent Republican Cory Gardner in Colorado against the former governor, 2-time mayor of Denver, 2-time governor of Colorado, failed presidential candidate in this cycle, John Hickenlooper. So assuming that Doug Jones does lose, we're exactly where we were at the beginning of the night, which is a 53-47 majority for the Republicans. They need to pick up 3 more seats, flip 3 more Republican seats, and win the White House so that you'd have Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker, or 4 net to take over the Senate. A couple of things. I've been in...
Shortly. The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that Democrats will retain control of the House of Representatives and expand their majority by at least 5 seats. That's a major boost for Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has pledged to roll back much of President Trump's first-term agenda if he loses re-election. So,
Oh, yeah. We're watching.
He's got all your chips on that.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet.
So the Fox News Decision Desk, minus Chris Stirewalt for just a minute, has made some decisions that we want to share with you. President Trump will defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of South Carolina tonight decisively.
And a big one, Fox News can also project that Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina will win re-election by defeating Democratic challenger Jamie Harrison, who managed to throw a scare into Graham, a big one, during a hard-fought campaign. Lindsey Graham will not say his website on any more interviews. He has managed to hold off and will win in South Carolina, and that is a big thing for the Republicans, Chris Wallace, because Lindsey Graham, he was threatened. They thought that Harrison could really take him out.
Yeah. And Harris raised an enormous amount of money, tens of millions of dollars, a real money machine pouring in there. But that was never a toss-up, and that was never leaning Democratic. It was, he got a scare, and he had to campaign probably harder than he thought he was going to have to. Yeah. But I think this was kind of what people in the end thought was going to happen.
You know, I just want to...
It is 10 o'clock here in New York City. Polls have just closed in another 4 states. Let's start with Iowa, where President Trump is locked in a close race with former Vice President Joe Biden. According to our decision desk, it's too early to project a winner in Iowa. The other state we're watching very closely at this hour is Nevada, where our vote analysis shows Biden ahead of Trump at the moment, although we'll need to analyze a lot more data from Nevada before making a call there.
Meanwhile, President Trump is ahead of the former vice president in a pair of western states. The first is Utah, home to Republican Senator Mitt Romney, and a frequent Trump critic, as we well know. And the other is Montana, a traditional Republican stronghold. Our decision desk still not quite ready to declare winners in either of those states yet tonight.
So if we look at our electoral map, where it stands right now and our lovely standing candidates, it is 129 to 109. Remember that 270 is the magic number to win the presidency. And you see those yellow states, obviously those have closed, but we have not called them yet, and that is where this race is really being battled. We have North Carolina. We have Florida that we haven't called yet, although Donald Trump has it. Welcome back. On your screen, a look at where this race stands at this hour in Florida. Take a look there. 91% of the precincts in. Donald Trump, 51.3% to 47.8%. In Georgia, there you go, 56% of the precincts in, and you see Donald Trump. Again, some of that other vote, as we talked about. And then North Carolina, a very close race there in North Carolina, but 91% of the precincts in. Again, all of those too early to call at this hour.
And let's take a look at the overall electoral map as it stands right now in the race to 270. Joe Biden at 129, President Trump at 109, and you see the percentage there, 48.2 to 50.2 as we stand. 0.3 as we stand this evening. Things are changing by the second at 10:22. So let's get some thoughts tonight from Laura Ingraham, host of.
The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that President Trump will defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of Utah. Not really a surprise there, but it ticks up into the president's column as we go towards 270. We are watching a lot of states that are kind of on the bubble here, and we're also looking at our voter analysis surveys that talk to about 150,000 Americans around the country.
So let's check in with Shannon Bream, who is here with more analysis of all of that fascinating information that's deep in all these pages. Hi, Shannon.
Hey, Brett and Martha. So let's look at Florida, where it's very tight and it hasn't been called yet. If it does go for President Trump, here is going to be one of the keys why. Seniors are backing him. Now, this comes after concerns that he might be losing them because of the way that he handled the coronavirus pandemic. Also this, Cuban voters are going for Trump, but more broadly Hispanics as a voting bloc. They're behind Biden. 8 in 10 voters there in Florida say it's important to them that the next president shake up the political system. Now, that includes close to half who say it's very important to them. Those are voters who broke for Trump by more than 10 points. On the other hand, most Florida voters want the next president to look out for people like them, and those voters say that they favor Biden over Trump. 7 in 10 in the Sunshine State, the voters there believe that Donald Trump stands up for what he believes in. Now, those voters broke for the president by an almost 2-to-1 margin. Interestingly enough, though, the angry voters that made up such an important part of Trump's voters 4 years ago, well, they're now in Joe Biden's column by a wide margin. So a lot more numbers to come. That's one of the key states. We'll keep watching them. Back to you guys.
Shannon,
okay, Shannon,
thank you very much.
Stuart Varney, host of Varney and Company on Fox Business Network, joins us now. Stuart, you've been watching this. We talked a little bit about the markets, the futures. We talked a little bit about the Chinese yuan. What are you seeing? Oh.
We've seen a remarkable switch just in the last hour or so. First of all, the betting markets. About 2 hours ago, the betting was favoring Joe Biden to win. Now, the betting market gives Donald Trump a 65% chance of winning. So you've got a real switch there. If you look at the stock market, we're looking at a continuing strong rally. The NASDAQ, for example, that's the home of all those popular big-name technology companies. That is up 3.5%. That is a whopping great big gain for that particular index. Stock prices across the board on the upside as we speak. Look at it on your screen right now. The President Trump seems to be putting in a strong showing, and investors like that. So the gains of the stock market that we saw on Monday and Tuesday, 1,000 points up on the Dow, that is holding. And Brett, I got to tell you, this is very important to ordinary people, if I can put it like that. Investing is no longer the area just for the rich and the elites. 100 million Americans are now investors in the market through 401ks and IRAs. And they are sitting on some very nice gains brought to them during the Trump rally of the last 4 years. They don't want to see those gains go away. If, for example, you had $100,000 in your 401k 4 years ago, you were doing well. Now you've probably got $140,000 in your 401k, and you want to keep that gain. So what we're seeing at the moment is the market suggesting that Donald Trump will win. The betting market suggesting that Donald Trump will win. It frankly reminds me a lot of 2016, where things turned around in the middle of the night. I think we're seeing that right now. The stocks and stock gains are holding.
Thank you, Stuart.
Stuart,
Great
as
to have you
always,
with us
thank you.
tonight. So the Fox News Decision Desk can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden will defeat President Trump in New Hampshire. Let's put that up and see the impact of that on the overall numbers here. Biden 53%, 44% as we take a look at the big picture here. You've got President Trump with 115, Joe Biden with 133. You know, New Hampshire was a state that the president lost by just close to 3,000 votes last time around. And we've talked about this, but there were a number of states that early on the Trump team was looking at as places that they could turn into Trump states, places like New Mexico, Nevada, places like Minnesota and New Hampshire. So this is the first one of those four that we're seeing tonight, and it's clear that Joe Biden is very comfortably holding the lead, even more so than Hillary Clinton did.
And the president made a stop in New Hampshire, at least one. I know the vice president went there as well. We're back with our panel. Britt, what are you seeing right now? What are you feeling right now?
A couple of things. The betting odds had once gotten up as high as 78% for Trump. They dialed back to 60-something now at about 70, so he's still the favorite of people who are betting their money tonight.
But put the caveat on that, because I've had people asking me, what do the Vegas casinos have better pollsters than the Washington types? It's just market money.
It's market money. I mean, that's what this is about. I mean, you know, Stuart made the point. I mean, people are betting their money in stocks, and people in China are worried about the yuan, and the trend is in that direction. Now, look, we got a long way to go tonight.
Yeah.
But at a minimum, I think it's fair to say that a lot of what the pollsters were telling us about how this was going to go, and there were many that had, you know, Trump losing on a bunch of these southern states. And
Florida, +5.
Florida, yeah, exactly. They're off again. And we've been through this before. We all thought, you know, that the pollsters who made those projections in the states 4 years ago and got it wrong, so badly wrong would have it figured out by now. You know, Trump may not win, but he certainly made them look bad tonight in a bunch of states, including, you know, as you point out, Florida being one of the main ones.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's...
He's a terrific campaign manager. He's a better father. He's a better husband. He's a better friend. I have the best campaign in the history of South Carolina.
A very relieved Senator Lindsey Graham speaking about his victory, reaching out a hand to his opponent, Jamie Harrison, who spent $103 million that went into that race on his behalf. It is now 11 o'clock on the East Coast. The polls have just closed in 4 more states. The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden will decisively beat President Trump in California, which is a 55 electoral vote haul. Huge number there. Joe Biden will also win the adjacent state of Oregon, according to our Fox News voter analysis.
Rounding out the Pacific Northwest, Biden will defeat Trump in the state of Washington, but in next-door Idaho, President Trump will easily defeat the former vice president.
So let's bring our panel back in with us this evening. Get a look around at how things are standing. Dana Perino, what are you watching? What's standing out to you at this point?
Okay, so in the re-elections for Bush and Obama, at the very tail end of those campaigns, they were able to get to like a 2.1% little burst. And you wonder if President Trump, in his amazing rush all across the country and all of those rallies and all of that work he did, you know, did that help him get that 2.1% or so, that little push that might help put him over the edge? The other thing I'm looking at is the issue of suburbs, but also about parents, right? There's a lot of parents in America. They're worried, I think, about schools being closed. And then to Stuart Varney's point, the taxes and the 401ks. And also one of the things that showed in research in the last few months is that cancel culture was a really big deal for some of these suburban parents. And I wonder if some of that is starting to show up tonight. So I'm watching that. And I also feel like the Democrats put so much money into races that were probably fool's gold for them. If you think about Jamie Harrison in South Carolina. Now, he's a bright young person. I'm excited to see where his future lies. He's going to do some pretty amazing things. But he wasn't going to beat Lindsey Graham. And for $100 million in South Carolina, Amy McGrath, another $100 million in Kentucky, you think maybe they should have put that money someplace else.
Sure.
We're going to make a big call right here. The Fox News decision desks can now project that President Donald Trump will win the state of Florida, 29 electoral votes, and he will win it convincingly.
Absolutely. 51.3 and 47.8 for President Trump and Joe Biden, respectively. Joe Biden spent a fair amount of time in Florida. The president put a huge press in Florida, spent a lot of time there. It's his home state, as he refers to it these days, with his home there in Palm Beach. We've seen a great turnout for him among seniors, among Hispanic voters, very strong support for the president among Cuban Americans. A lot has been said about his effort to reach them with stories about socialism and the prospect for a more socialistic government in this country, something that resonated quite a bit with Venezuelan and Cuban residents in the state of Florida. So, you know, it's obviously a very interesting dichotomy, the state of Florida, Brett, as you take a look at it. And it is a real cross-section of Americans. So many people move from New York there. So many people move from all over the country there. And it's very representative in many ways.
Well, in
the
light of the
president's home
pandemic,
state.
of course, in light of the pandemic, of course, we got a lot of people who went there to get away from
never left.
And never left. And so one wonders going forward how much the demographics of the state of Florida will change. But I think, you know, we're looking at things tonight that we thought, it was thought for a while that Trump might lose the elderly vote. That appears in a meaningful, big way. It appears that that's not happening.
And here we go. We can make a projection. The Fox News decision desk can project that Republican Tommy Tuberville will unseat Democrat Senator Doug Jones of Alabama, the first and possibly only Republican pickup of a Senate seat tonight. Alabama, remember, this is the Jeff Sessions seat that he was trying to get back, lost to Tuberville in the primary.
And that evens out the Cory Gardner loss in Colorado and leaves us at square one in terms of moving that balance of power in the Senate. We can also now project Louisiana Republican Senator Bill Cassidy has won his reelection as well. And
not a surprise there. So you're looking at the net gain, and it was +1 for Democrats. Now it is back to 0. And again, they need to pick up 3 plus the White House or a net gain of 4 seats to take over control of the Senate.
I don't want to start ticking these off yet, guys. I think it's too early. I haven't made a lot of calls in some of the states, so I'll refrain from that for now. But what is this happening here? Why is Arizona blue? Did we just call it? Did we make a call in Arizona?
Well, let's see.
Now, there's a check mark. Did our decision desk make it? Arizona, 11 electoral votes?
Yes, we can.
Okay, if that's the case, then, guys, when we come back, we'll fill this in. If you lose Arizona, where do you win now? You got to win up here in Wisconsin and Michigan and maybe even Minnesota in order to pull this out, and that's leaving Pennsylvania off the map. And I'll leave that with you guys.
Okay, timeout. This is a big development.
Yeah.
The Fox News decision desk is calling Arizona for Joe Biden. That is a big get for the Biden campaign. It's also signals that it's a good night for Mark Kelly, the Democratic Senate candidate against Martha McSally there. But Biden picking up Arizona changes the math, and it is the first of the night that goes into the column of somebody else's bucket that they thought last time was going to hold on to Arizona. There was a lot of effort spent by the Trump campaign to get to Arizona, to play there, to have ads there. And we are calling now the former vice president. If you look at the race to 270 electoral votes, Joe Biden is ticking closer at 218 to 148.
And it breaks apart that Sun Belt strategy. If you've got Arizona going to Biden and Florida, at least, is the one that we know of so far in the rest of that Sun Belt area. We also have called Mark Kelly over Martha McSally in that race in Arizona as well. And just to mention one of the dynamics in Arizona, just one of many, but Cindy McCain came out in favor of Joe Biden, her close friend. This is obviously a state that has been very purpley, sent Kristen Sinema to the Senate as well in a tight race. You know, for Martha McSally, she was appointed to that post twice. And she has not won an election to be a senator of the United States now. So that is worth mentioning as well. Mark Kelly, the former astronaut, has secured that.
So he called it for Joe Biden.
Yeah, we got a little information for you guys. New data from our Fox News voter analysis on why Biden won Arizona. As you've pointed out, this is the first state that flipped from Trump to Biden, or from Republicans back in 2016 now to the Democrat. So in 2016, President Trump won by just over 3 points. He has not taken Arizona for granted this year. He was there 7 times at least. A lot of people retired to Arizona, helping seniors make up 30% of the voters of there, and that group split. Hispanics, of course, an important and growing group in Arizona, key to the vote there. President Trump had hoped his conservative views would ring true with them, but 6 in 10 Hispanic voters in Arizona decided to back Biden. Arizona was hit hard by the coronavirus there, and few voters feel that the spread there is under control. Indeed, a majority said the virus is still out of control across the United States. An Arizona resident drew national attention during the Democratic convention when she told of how her father had died of COVID-19 after putting too much trust in Trump. That was her story. Now, slightly more think that Biden would be able to handle the pandemic, while 4 in 10 voters believe Trump would be able better to deal with COVID. But you can see those are some of the key issues, the key voting groups there that apparently gave Arizona to the Biden win column tonight, guys.
Okay, Shannon, thank you. We have another call to make, and that is in the presidential race. The state of New Mexico we can now project will go to former Vice President Joe Biden. So that's 5 electoral votes for Biden. If we look at the race for 270, I think we can get it up here, and that is 223 to 148. New Mexico, not a surprise. Arizona, again, was possibly in the red column. We have a couple other calls to make in the Senate races.
Yeah, with John Cornyn in Texas. Let's take a look at that. This is the race. MJ Hagar ran against him, 44% to 53%. At one point, that looked like a close race. I think one of the storylines tonight is about Texas, which we've been told up and down was a possible flip. Kamala Harris was there just a couple of days ago. A lot of sort of excitement around the fact that perhaps Texas was in play. And at least in John Cornyn's race, it does not turn out to be the situation. We're waiting, of course, for the rest of Texas to come in tonight, but John Cornyn has secured his seat.
Which bodes well for President Trump in Texas. Then you look at Mississippi, to your point, Britt. The Republican there, Cindy Hyde-Smith, winning there, a stiff challenge from the Democrat Espy, who there's a lot of money spent on this race in Mississippi, and there was a hope on the Democrats that they could pull this off. They haven't, but that does not change the net gain. If you look again, right now, D+1, and that largely is Mark Kelly in Arizona, which we just called. Democrats need 4 to take control of the Senate, and we'll see the races in Maine, again, Michigan, and we've got a lot to look at as you see the population tick up there, 45, 44.
We looked at every possible way that this could go. And if there were some way that it looked like Donald Trump was going to be able to bring Arizona in, we wouldn't have called it. But the reality is that the margins are too significant. We feel very confident in the call, or otherwise we wouldn't have made it.
I'm going to interrupt you. Fox News, the decision desk, including Chris Starwalt, can now call the state of Ohio for President Trump. That is 18 electoral votes in the state of Ohio, hard-fought votes. The president needed this. You can't get to the White House. A Republican couldn't without Ohio. He now wins Ohio. So, Chris, there you go. I mean, just having you on produced this result.
We get results. And this tells you more of our north-south story tonight, right? Biden has managed to flip one southern state in Arizona, but the president is still holding open his northern path. If he can bring Georgia and North Carolina in, the pathway remains open as long as none of those gold-colored states in the northern tier come in for Biden. So right now, he is staying alive, and it's narrow, but he is still in it.
Overtake.
Yeah, the Trump people are bullish right
now.
They're bullish on Wisconsin, but we got a big call to make here.
We do.
Bill.
All right, we can now call Texas for the President of the United States. This is a state that I think nobody expected would be as close as it is tonight, 46% to 52%. But the president has now claimed Texas, which is definitely one of the states that he won last time that he needed to win tonight. And he has achieved that goal. 38 electoral votes in the state of Texas, despite the fact that Beto O'Rourke and others were very hopeful that the tide was changing in Texas, it has held once again for the Republican president.
It is changing. The electorate in Texas is changing. The fact that it was this close and it took us this long to call it. But there you see the race to 270, 223 to 204 now, with the big haul of Texas in President Trump's column. As we head to break here, let's check in on a couple of Senate races. One, Michigan, we just talked about, and we've been mentioning throughout the night, John James against the incumbent, Gary Peters. Let's take a look at that board, maybe. We'll get it. And in that race, there you see John James holding a lead now. It's only half of the precincts in. We also want to check one more on the Senate races.
Maine, Susan Collins at 52.1, and Sarah Gideon, 41%. Obviously, a lot of money's gone into this race as well. Susan Collins trying very hard to hold on to her seat in Maine. That's a quick look at some of those hot Senate races as we head to a break.
We'll be right back.
Throughout the night. But to your point about Wisconsin,
Bill, you know what's really great about you?
Sorry?
You produce, you and Styrewall, whenever you're on. Fox News Decision Desk can make a call. And that is Iowa for President Trump. He will win the state of Iowa, the 6 electoral votes in Iowa. That was tight as you got towards Election Day. He will win Iowa, and Joni Ernst is there as well. We haven't made a call in that race yet.
I would just point out that it's a 7-point spread, exactly what the Des Moines Register said it would be just a couple of days ago. So once again, there is a pollster out there that is doing a good job tonight.
Okay, we do have another call to make, and that is a major call to announce. The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden will defeat President Trump in the key battleground state of Minnesota. There was some hope in the Trump campaign that they could pull out Minnesota. It was very close last time around in 2016, but the Decision Desk now calling Minnesota for Joe Biden.
Yeah, that was one that Amy Klobuchar has obviously spoken a lot about, very near and dear to her heart, her home state. She said that she felt very confident that Minnesota would stay in the blue column, and indeed it has. So these are the numbers that we're at right now. 237 now on the path to 270 for Joe Biden, and the president is at 210 at this point, with a lot of states out there still to call. Brett, yeah.
He's in the command position without declaring victory.
Okay, let's bring in Arnon Mishkin, director of the Fox News Decision Desk. Arnon, we're getting a lot of incoming here, and we need you to answer some questions. Arizona, are you 100% sure of that call and when you made it, and why did you make it?
Absolutely. We made it after basically a half hour of debating, is it time yet? Because it's been clear for a while that the former vice president is in the lead in Arizona and was most likely to win the state. It has been in the category that we call knowable but not callable for about an hour. We finally called it. Right now, yes, there are some outstanding votes in Arizona. Most of them are coming from Maricopa, where Biden is currently in a very strong position, and many of them are mail-in votes, where we know from our Fox News voter analysis Biden has an advantage. We don't know exactly how many mail-in votes there are, but what I think we've heard from the White House is that they are expecting to get, that they need just to get 61% of the outstanding vote, and there are 870,000 outstanding votes, and they'll be getting that. That's not true. The reality is that they're likely to get only about 44% of the outstanding votes that are there. We're right now sitting on a race that is Biden at 53%, Trump at 46%. I'm sorry, the president is not going to be able to take over and win enough votes to eliminate that 7-point lead that the former vice president has.
Yeah, they have said that they believe that he will get 65% of the outstanding votes, which they claim are at 1 million to 1.1 million. You're saying that the universe of votes that's still out there is much lower than that?
We think the universe of votes is outstanding is lower than that, and we believe that, I'm sorry, he's not getting anywhere near 65% of that. And that's why we made this call. I mean, this is a call that's sitting in our statistical models at sort of at a T-stat of 4 or more in all the different ways we...
Well, you have a call that is, the Fox News Decision Desk can say that Montana will go into the column of President Trump, 3 electoral votes. So as you look at the race to 270.
And Brett.
Hold on, Brett. We'll just add up these numbers. 237 to 213.
Yeah. The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden will win the state of Wisconsin, further narrowing President Trump's prospects for amassing the 270 electoral votes needed for a second term. So we were just talking about this. You knew that this was getting close, but look at that, Brett, 49.6 to 48.9. So that's when you say it goes to the recount.
Right. This is, it's a huge win for Joe Biden here because it's a different path. But you could be a scenario where his path is with states that are being recounted. So that creates all kinds of other questions. We're not even talking yet about Michigan and Pennsylvania, where there are potential lawsuits there as far as absentee ballots, matching signatures.
What about Nevada?
And Nevada. So you could have a recount in Nevada. Now remember, just 20 years ago, 537 votes, Tallahassee, Florida, and we had that recount that obsessed the nation with.
Remind people why it took that long. Why did it take 36 days?
Because there were court battles, different legal battles over the hanging chads, how people interpreted the vote, and the type of ballot, the butterfly ballot in Palm Beach. So basically, I was bouncing around courtroom to courtroom on different kinds of lawsuits. We could see that this time, but not one state.
Multiple states.
But multiple states at the same time. Now, Nevada is closing too, and the Trump campaign sees a way that they can pull votes in Nevada.
Joe Biden has won Michigan and gets the 16 electoral votes from Michigan. That puts him now 6 electoral votes from the presidency of the United States. Nevada could do it. Those electoral votes are still out there. When there's 6 electoral votes there. If he were to take that state, he would be at 270, and he would be on his way to the White House.
Election protests intensifying as thousands take to the streets, demanding that every vote be counted. Ainsley.
Ashley Strohmeyer is live with the chaos erupting in cities across our country. Hey, Ashley.
Hey, Ainsley, police clashed with a mob of protesters in various cities across the country last night. Now, it was peaceful at first. They raised Biden campaign signs and then chanted, "Count the vote," but then it got completely out of control. 60 people ended up being arrested in New York City for setting fires, spitting in officers' faces, and even punching an NYPD chief in the face. Police also found weapons and loaded magazines during an arrest. Now, in Detroit, protesters were furious over the lack of access to the ballot counting process. Officials ended up padlocking those doors so they couldn't get in. Those protesters were chanting, "Stop the vote," following news of the president filing that lawsuit in Michigan. And a riot was declared in Portland because of widespread violence.
Fox News alert, a live look at the big map as the race to 270 continues, with Joe Biden holding 264 at this hour, Donald Trump at 214. A win in any of the key battlegrounds left would put Joe Biden over the top. As we know, President Trump would have to run the board to reach that 270 mark. Eric Shawn is joining us live on the ground in Philadelphia. And as I put this state up on the map, Eric, I want to point out a couple key counties that we're watching at this hour. As we now know, Joe Biden is leading in the state by 0.1 percentage points. This change just happened top of the hour. The difference with 98% of the vote in is 5,596 votes. We're watching Allegheny County, where we know that as of last check, there was about 36,000 ballots left to be counted there. In that county is solidly Joe Biden, 59% of the vote to Donald Trump's 40%. You go back out to the state, obviously a focus is Philadelphia County, 81% of the vote going to Joe Biden. There's still many votes, tens of thousands of votes yet to be counted in that county. Watching this state very closely, that is where we find you this morning, Eric. What is the latest that you can tell us ahead of hearing from those officials on the ground there about 1 hour from now?
Yeah, Sandra, the latest here is despite all the noise and the accusations on the outside in the building behind me, the Philadelphia Convention Center, the work of counting this race meticulously and methodically is continuing vote by vote as the workers are doing the work that they are tasked for, the election poll workers here in Pennsylvania. As part of Joe Biden's strength, he is, of course, Scranton Joe, having been born here, even though he moved to Delaware when he was young because his father got a job in Delaware. He was able to capitalize on those working class roots, being a Pennsylvania-born a native son, and really reach out to not just the working class, but the middle class and those suburban voters. The massive tilt, 80% plus in Philadelphia County, which is the city of Philadelphia, also not reflected to that level, but reflected strongly in what they call the collar counties, such as Montgomery, right around the Philadelphia suburbs, those also going toward Biden clearly. As for the count here and the allegations of fraud, we have not seen any evidence of any type of massive fraud or, in fact, any report at the moment. There could be some problems, I'm told, with 30 ballots in one county. We'll wait to confirm what type of situation that is. But it is, Sandra, I think, as we reflect on this, a remarkable personal American story for Joseph Biden. Just think about it. 77 years old. He tried for the presidency twice before. Youngest senator ever elected from Delaware. His wife and daughter killed in a car crash. He had to persevere through that, stay in the Senate through decades, through the death of his beloved son, Beau. I saw Mr. Biden in 2016 at the commencement at Colby College in Maine, where he gave a very emotional, personal, stirring address to the young graduates there. And, you know, after college graduations, you go to the tent. It's a couple hours later, and you have lunch, and you come back. And up on the hill, there was a crowd around two black SUVs, and the reporter in me looked at that and said, it's him. He's there. And I walked up, and sure enough, Joe Biden stayed at the Colby College commencement for 2.5 hours afterwards, standing on the lawn, talking to about 30 people, hugging people when they talked about Beau. And I sat there looking at that thinking, he's running. Beau Biden tried to have him promise that he would run. He did not think the last time was the time because of Hillary Clinton's juggernaut and huge lead as well as money, so he begged off last time. This time he did not, and he may come up with success. Finally, the city commissioners here were waiting for the news conference to update the numbers. 50,000 ballots still to remain to be counted. We expect about 20,000 to come in. And let me explain something that's very important. Our viewers at home have heard about these massive tranches of votes that suddenly appear for Joe Biden. Well, that's not true. The fact is that they count votes and they continue that, and then they decided 4 times a day to release the numbers. The officials strongly say here that there is no election fraud. They refute and reject all of the allegations from the President of the United States and his campaign concerning any possible nefarious actions here. They say that is not true at all as they continue, they say, to fairly and honestly count the votes. We expect that update in the next hour. And the commissioners have said that they will likely have a result here completely later on today.
And Eric,
back to you in the studio.
Eric, of course, looking at Philadelphia County, waiting on the additional votes there, you're reminded of the 75,000 absentee ballots. Obviously, that is adding to
Fox News Decision Desk can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden will be elected the 46th President of the United States. And now with that projection, news that the president is continuing to fight, saying he will not concede and will fight this legal battle in courtrooms across the country. Standing by with us now, the host of Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace. Chris, your thoughts on this projection and where we are in this unique time in history?
Well, first of all, I'll vividly remember back in 1980 when I was covering Ronald Reagan and he became the president, no dispute about it, in 1980. And there's just something that changed. The Secret Service detail got bigger. The people around him were now saying Mr. President instead of governor. There is a different feel in the air when a man has been elected president of the United States, even with all the caveats that you just delivered, Brett. You're exactly right. Donald Trump has every right to pursue legal challenges. Other failing candidates have in the past. so far, at least, we don't see anything that would rise to the level of a serious fraud, and certainly not a serious fraud that would change the results of elections. We're not talking about 500 votes as we were in Florida in 2000. We're talking about tens of thousands of votes in Pennsylvania, tens of thousands of votes in Nevada. So the president is certainly right, within his legal rights, to pursue these challenges, but there really, at this point, doesn't seem to be much reason to believe they're going to succeed. One of the guests we're going to have on Fox News Sunday, we've been told by the Biden, I guess you would say transition now, not campaign, that they're going to give us somebody who is a top official in the transition about President-elect Biden's plans both for personnel and policy going forward. We're also going to have Mitt Romney, the senator and a failed presidential candidate himself. He came out with a tweet yesterday and made exactly this point. He said, it is absolutely within the president's legal rights to pursue every challenge that he believes in, but he felt that the president really needs to watch his language and said that, you know, it's one thing to say, I want to contest the vote in Pennsylvania or Nevada or Arizona. It's another thing to say the vote has been stolen, that the election has been rigged. And he talked about that the disorder, what that does, damaging the peaceful transfer of power in this country. So I think you're going to see that increasingly from a number of Republicans that, you know, if you want to pursue this in court, go ahead, but let's not be talking about stolen elections or election fraud.
But, Chris, no one expects that President Trump is going to go quietly. He has said in all of these tweets that he believes that he won. So the question becomes, what does it look like? You know, I mean, Mitt Romney can ask him to be careful with his language. People have said that, you know, over the course of the last 3 years. But he is the man who he is, and he speaks boldly. And my estimation is that nothing will change in that regard for some time, at least in the coming days, as he wrestles with the reality of this and also with the legal realities and what is possible as he puts together what's said to be, by John Roberts' reporting, a large and formidable team.
Well, I have two reactions to that. First of all, I think it's going to become increasingly untenable for the president. Again, there's one thing to be pursuing legal challenge. There's another to have this very heightened rhetoric that we know is the way the president does business. I think it's going to become increasingly untenable because I think you're going to start to see a lot of the Republican leaders you know, who are now realizing that their fortunes and their futures are no longer so directly tied to Donald Trump, are going to begin to pull back. You even saw Lindsey Graham, who may be or may have been until yesterday Donald Trump's closest friend, closest colleague in the Senate, beginning to talk about a Biden presidency and wanting working with him, and that they have a good personal relationship. So I think you're going to begin to see more and more of that from Republican leaders in the Senate and the House and around the country. The other thing I think we do have to point out is how unnormal, how abnormal that this is, because, you know, I've been studying up on Mitt Romney because of the fact that, as I say, I'm going to have him as a guest tomorrow. Back in 2012, when he was the losing candidate, it was about 11:30 at night when we called Ohio and the presidency for Barack Obama. And Romney had, as all these candidates do, an army of lawyers who are ready to go out to airports, to go around the country, to challenge. There always are questions about the vote count in various states. And he waited for 90 minutes, Romney did, and then he called President Obama and he conceded. And that is what people do. It's always hard to accept. Hillary Clinton needed some time until the next morning, if you remember, before she came out and conceded to wrap their heads around it. But in the end, they look at the overwhelming math and they do concede. And, you know, there are things that happen. The president invites, if he loses, invites the winner into the White House to have that meeting in the Oval Office, the two of them sitting in the wingback chairs together. You begin to see members of the winning team, the transition team, being invited into all the departments. You do get the concession speech. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if we don't get that, and I think the Biden campaign has been prepared for that, they can go ahead. but it certainly cuts into the transfer of power that most Americans